The open road is calling, it's got stories to tell. I've got a few of my own flowing from a deeper well. The cherry blossoms blooming, shimmering clouds, pink and white, and I'm leaving the old things behind.
Welcome to the Midlife Capers Podcast. I'm your host, Kara Highsmith. In each episode, we will hear from people, everyday friends and neighbors kinds of people, who have taken on some sort of adventure in midlife. Maybe it's a creative project where they explore a previously hidden talent. It might be pulling up stakes and moving to a new, unexpected location just because. It could be changing the way they show up in the world. The point is, they are doing something that pushes them outside their comfort zones, responding to those internal nudges, allowing themselves and their lives to take a different shape than they imagined. I hope you will find their stories inspiring, perhaps motivating, and keep coming back as we have new conversations. Welcome to the Midlife Capers Podcast. Our guest this week is Randy Spelling, my dear friend and former client. And when we first talked about being a guest on the podcast, you had said that you weren't yet 50 and that you hadn't made any radical changes. And I thought, first of all, the technical definition of a midlifer is mid 40s to early 60s. So I think you're in that window.
I'm in that.
I can't remember exactly how much younger you are, but I think you're in that window. And but more than that, I was thinking about the work you do in supporting people through a variety of different life changes they're going through. And I know you've got the Oldish podcast that you're doing with some friends. And so I think you would have some great things to add to this conversation as I'm talking to people. Most of the people I'm focusing on are everyday, friends and neighbors kinds of people. So that we can kind of demonstrate that when you feel a nudge to make some kind of a change, do something different, maybe something a little radical with your life, that you don't have to have great resources behind you. You just have to have a little bit of bravery to go ahead and step outside your comfort zone. And so that's kind of what I wanted to talk with you about. I usually lead off with asking, what did life look like before you were 50 and what changed at that stage, and how things look now and what prompted the change and that kind of thing. But since you're not 50 yet, I'd really kind of just want to talk with you a little bit about the work that you do in helping people, steering them through these types of big changes in their lives.
Sure. Yeah. First of all, good to see you.
It's great to see you too.
I haven't seen your face on screen other than, chatting back and forth through messages. So it's good to see your face and share a little space, even if it's virtual.
Yeah. And we're so close. I keep threatening to drive down there and have lunch.
I know.
And it just never happens. But
it'll happen. I'm confident that it'll happen. And yeah, I thank you for asking me about this. I have a lot to say on the subject matter, even though I'm not technically 50 yet, but I am no stranger to change. I'm no stranger to transformation. And I would actually go as far as to say I'm also an everyday friend and neighbor. Just because of my background, it doesn't make the human experience any less hard when you're nervous about something, when you're going through a challenging time, when there's fear, when there's uncertainty, when you feel like you're going to break if something doesn't change, or you feel that something has broken and you need to change. But there's so many unknowns, or the how brings up a big question mark. And so, we all go through that at different times. Just so happens that midlife, it stirs up so much. And I don't know what you feel about this or how this has been for you in talking to people, but there is something very real about getting to the age where you start to look at the years that you have left,
Mm-hmm.
not just where you came from or what it's like in the moment, but you start to go, wait, I have a finite amount of time left. What do I want to do with my life? How do I want to live? And more importantly, how do I want to feel?
Mm-hmm.
And so those are the questions that come up, and those questions stir up a whole lot. What's one of the most common things that you hear from those questions that get stirred up in people?
Well, I'm reaching the age where, unfortunately, so many of my peers are losing their parents. I
Mhm.
lost both of mine within a little over a year. In fact, I just passed the 1 year anniversary of my mom's death, and that in itself is what I remember saying to my brother um, when my mom died, because my dad preceded her.
Mhm.
Um, I was like, "Is it weird to say we're orphans now?" And I was like, we are, I know that's not the conventional concept around the term, but our parents aren't with us anymore. And there's something that's very untethering about that. There's something that you just, because they were your anchor in the world, because they're the ones who brought you into the world. And so when that's gone, it really does make you start feeling like, okay, I got to figure out who I am in a way that isn't wrapped up in my family identity, or the roles that I've played. And that's kind of what kicked it off for me. I didn't like intentionally set out, oh, I've lost both of my parents and I've got to go on this big journey. It's just that I had been a caregiver for them for quite a while. And so I all of a sudden, my son was grown. So I had an empty nest and I didn't have the responsibility of looking after them in their failing health. And so I thought, I just don't know what life looks like now. And so I, I'm just going to go do this thing that seemed like a good next step. And and so I know that a lot of my friends, my peers, are losing parents, and it is shifting their whole perspective on who they are in the world.
Yes, it's well said. Losing both parents, losing one parent is it can be very difficult, very challenging, no matter, by the way, the relationship that you've had with the parent.
Right.
I've seen it go all sorts of different ways where someone has such a close relationship with the parent, and their grieving process, it doesn't have to look any certain way, but their grieving process isn't as what people would deem harsh. There's someone who had a not so good relationship with their parent, and because there's so much unresolved stuff, then it all comes to the surface, and it can be a harder process. It goes so many different ways. But what I would say, and speak to what you're referring to, it is a complete identity shift
Mhm.
when you lose both parents, because you're right. The way that you tether no longer exists. And you've done that your whole life. So when those two people are not physically on the planet, it becomes things come up like, oh, I can't call, I can't reach out. Even if you were caretaking, it's just the space that they fill up
Mhm.
is no longer there. And that childlike role, when you're the child of a parent, that part tends to shift. And then you go, I'm here. This is, I'm now here on the planet in the world without parents. And it can feel kind of raw.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's just that's your point of origin. And
Mhm.
so it's, we're well, I keep using the term untethered because that is just how it felt to me
Yeah.
as I was finally catching my breath after all of that. and sitting with how I felt. And so it's a really powerful thing. But even without that component of a real physical loss, a lot of the people my age are just experiencing being empty nesters now, and that is another type of identity shift. And or maybe they are reaching a point to where in their careers they are looking at who's coming in behind them, and these young people with all this vibrant energy. And I know in a lot of fields the young crop of people to fill these roles are seen to have more value than the older ones who are seasoned. And the wisdom and experience is not as valued as the exuberance and new ideas that you tend to perceive with people coming into that workforce marketplace.
Mhm.
And so I really do think that there are all the cliches about a midlife crisis, and that's not what I want to focus on, because it is a trope, and it's a cliche that is um, laden with negative perceptions. And it's the middle-aged man who gets an earring and a convertible, or
Right.
it's
It's so funny what
yeah,
you attach to that by association.
yeah,
Instantly, the picture's created in my mind.
yeah,
And while it can feel like a crisis, which all change and transformation can have a crisis element to it, it is not a crisis. Let's rename it right now. Let's
well,
say it's midlife expansion.
well, and that's why I call it midlife capers,
Yeah.
because capers feel kind of fun. They're these maybe a little bit naughty, but they're adventures. And I had, well, when I first came up with the midlife capers idea, I had to explain to my son that they weren't the little brined things that you have in Italian food,
Right. Yeah.
because that was the only concept he had of a caper. But yeah, so it just, beyond an adventure, it was kind of I'm gonna go see what kind of fun trouble I can get into. I don't.
Yeah.
It resonated with me, and that's why rather than a crisis, I called it a caper.
Yeah. I have a way of looking at it. And again, it's all perspective here, but in order for things to change, there always has to be a catalyst.
Sure.
Period. Right? Like we don't really change without a different thought, a different feeling. Circumstantially, a child moves out, someone says I'm done in the relationship, or someone gets let go from a job, or you decide that there's always a catalyst. And it's so difficult if when you're in it, it's so difficult. If you could pull back and look at the bird's eye view, that change needs to happen. Let's say that we have our own blueprint. Just as a theory, we have a blueprint of sort of bigger things in life, not exactly what you're going to eat for breakfast, but like these bigger markers. In order for you to fulfill that blueprint and move in the world in the ways in which you need, things are going to have to happen or come up or arise in order to get you to move. And if we can step back and look at, okay, this is what's happening in order for me to move places or move states or go on adventures, then that's what needs to happen. And I think for working with people for so long, it's hard not to get caught up in the details of everything that is going on in day-to-day life. And when you're in it, everything feels so big, and every decision that you make, should I do this? Is this a terrible idea? And it's necessary to process, but I think if we could all be able to embrace change more as the normal, as the, yes, midlife, things are going to come up. I'm supposed to move in different directions. So, hey, it's almost like an expect that things are going to come up and you're going to start to feel different, whether that's in your relationship, in your job, in your body.
Mm-hmm.
You might want to all of a sudden take a dance class. And you're like, why do I want to take a dance class? I haven't danced for years. But it's an awareness that's coming up. You either want to get back to something because you felt good and you felt free, or you want to experience something new because your soul is like, please, let's experience something new and have more fun and expand a little bit here, because we get kind of tight and locked into the ways that we get locked into.
Yeah, for sure. Well, in the work that you do as a, you don't call yourself a life coach, do you? Is that what?
I don't know what to call myself. You could go with life coach. That's fine.
Well, but there's
That's how it started.
That's another fraught term that, like midlife crisis is. So I don't want to mislabel
It's
you
okay.
if it has connotations that you don't adopt. But in your work with your clients who are going through this kind of transition, what are some of the, and I don't even want to call them mistakes because everybody can learn from experiences, but what are some of the steps that you see taken often that can lead you into the wrong direction or can make things harder than they have to be and that kind of thing?
Step number one is giving too much power to fear. Fear that it's too late. Fear that everything won't turn out for the best. And even that term, turn out for the best, not turn out exactly the way that you want and you envision it to go.
Right. Yeah.
Because that rarely happens. If so, great, but turn out for the best, again, for you, for your expansion. Excess worry.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a worrier. I get it. Worry can be helpful if you take a meeting with it. If you sit down with worry, have a cup of coffee, a cup of tea, serve worry a meal, and say, I'm going to take all the notes that you tell me everything. I'm here to listen. I see you. I hear you. It's valid. Tell me everything. Write it down. Listen to worry and write down all of these notes that you possibly can. Then say, okay, thank you so much. Give worry a hug. I'll see you in 2 months. Walk worry out the door. Take 5 minutes to ground yourself and enter into your highest self, your soul self, the self that when a friend calls you and they're in need, all of a sudden your inner life coach, therapist, wise person comes in and you're like, damn, why am I not taking all of this advice? Channel that version, the version that's already through the situation and thriving. Come back to the table, look at the list, and I want you to answer those questions, each one from that wise self. When you do that, you have solutions, you have answers. Keep that list handy, but it's out of your head. It's out of the rumination phase. And a lot of times people get locked into that rumination loop where it just loops back to what if, what if, what if. And you want to stop that because that just drags all the energy of this change and this new possibility to the worst possible catastrophic scenario that statistically 90% of the time doesn't happen.
Right. Yeah. Well, so then conversely, what is one of the things that you see people kind of doing intuitively that sets them up for success?
Great question. Intuitively following the awarenesses that they're having, not thoughts. We follow our thoughts day in and day out. We become lunatics, right?
Yeah.
But and a nudge. I think you said this earlier. You get a nudge that you want to move in a different direction, or something's coming up for you, right? You talked about starting this podcast. Like there was just this moment of clarity. You woke up and you saw it clearly. That's an awareness. That's an intuitive nudge, let's say, right? Follow those, because I wouldn't believe this. I know this sounds crazy, but I've seen this day in and day out so many times that I'm a staunch believer of this. And I'm a skeptic, by the way. I have a healthy amount of skepticism. I don't just believe in all things spiritual, all things woo. I like some proof. And I've gotten enough proof to where I'm like, I'm all in. Follow the awareness that's coming up, because when you feel it, that is what is guiding you. And so that becomes, if you can amplify that and even talk to it, why is that there? This is coming up now. Where could this lead me? Keep it open. Not, here's all the things that could go wrong, and here's my worry and my fear. You can look at that while you have your meeting. But like, why is this coming up now? Ask these curious, open-ended questions. How could this improve my life? What am I not seeing now that if I let my mind just go wild, this could be incredible or amazing? Our minds aren't typically built to do that. We have to train that thought process. The mind is trained to keep you safe.
Right.
So it will go to worst case scenario because it's in survival and it's trained for safety. When you take the other part of your brain and you daydream like a child, how could this work out for the best? What could I see myself doing where I'm joyful and happy? How could this open something up? You start to feel and see things that you otherwise wouldn't feel. Now that is on the table. And I think that needs to be empowered more than or as much as all the things that could go wrong.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's so funny because so much of what you've said about fear and letting yourself have that conversation with the worry, those little conversations that are your inner mean girl coming out and saying, oh, well, you can't do that. I mean, people are going to laugh at you, or you're going to ruin your life by doing, and all of the go into the worst case scenario and everything it's not a healthy way to explore your fear. And so I love what you've said about all of that. And I was thinking back to your first book that I worked with you on, which was Unlimiting You. And I still love that concept so much because it's kind of like another term that has become popular is unlearning things. We have these patterns, we have these embedded messages, and a lot of times we're not even aware of them, or we don't know where we picked it up in the first place. And so we have to be it's not just a matter of, oh, I'll go in this different direction. You really have to unpack and unlearn those things that are restrictive or that give you the wrong idea about how you can and should show up in the world. And your term unlimiting, we let that fear really keep us small and insulated and limited. And so it is a learned behavior. And so if you want to talk a little bit about that as well.
Yeah, I don't know if you remember, but the chapter about fear There's an exercise about flipping the coin. Oh, no, that was disconnection. There was a exercise in looking at fear as a small child. And we sort of painted the picture of how that can even be kind of humorous and funny.
Mhm.
But immediately you look at the perspective, because fear can become so big. And again, who's creating the fear? You are.
Mhm.
You are creating how big the fear becomes, but it can become so big that it is 10 times larger than you. And I think in a funny way, looking at it like a Sesame Street version, where there's this tiny little child, on this giant chair and the legs are swinging and you're talking with fear. Now you're in the right visual, physical state to see you are the one that's empowered here. You get to talk to fear just like worry and listen to it and hear, but also talk to it in a way in which you want fear to join your team. And I'm a realist. I get it. Like, fear is real to a degree. It's not like you can just say, "Oh, I'm just going to push it away," because it doesn't exist. But it doesn't have to run the show. And I think that is the biggest thing in terms of change, is the fear of change. It's why people don't change,
Yeah.
is because of fear. And I've heard this through the years, fear of success. And I think that's such an interesting one, because it's like, people want success so much. Does everyone really fear success and that's why they're not successful? No, I don't believe that. But I see how people fear change.
Mm.
And I think that when you change from the pattern that you've existed in, that is scary, because it breaks your personal matrix. And like you said, we were talking about, it's an identity change.
Yeah.
When the ego changes identity, the ego doesn't like that, because the ego is, here is how I exist. And when you look at, well, you exist beyond the ego's like, what, no, I can't, I don't exist without me. It glitches.
Yeah.
So we have to look at these identity shifts. And every time you change, by the way, you are shifting your person. You are shifting yourself to a different identity. We're doing it all the time. We just hold on when it's bigger, because it feels scary to go into the unknown self versus the self that's known. Even if you want to change, it's familiar.
Yeah. And actually, I have an upcoming blog that is, it's called, When the Dog Catches the Car, and it's about that fear, the fear of success. And
Yeah.
one of the main points is that I think a lot of times it's because you imagine something and build it up in your head so much. And then when you get it, it's like, oh, now I have to sustain it. Now I have to actually perform the thing, and that ties back in identity. Now I have to have a new identity. When it was abstract, when it was dreaming, I didn't actually have to change anything about myself. But
Exactly.
now that I'm going into this new place, I absolutely have to change the way I'm doing things, or else it's going to fail. And
Yep. There it is. Right. So you could add in, when we're talking about success, those who you have seen be successful, become successful. Maybe you have judgment about them. Maybe you think that they are so incredibly busy, or that they're so stressed to have to maintain what they have, that then that feels bad. So there, again, though, we're talking fear of change.
yeah,
And I love what you're saying, because it is that fear of change of, oh, well, if someone has that amount of success, they have to be really organized. And I'm not really organized. So I have to change from being disorganized to organized. And like, oh, that's so scary, because it brings up the times that my parent told me that I was so disorganized. How am I going to survive in the world? And so now I feel shame. So I'm going to do anything I can to not feel that shame.
Yeah.
And therein lies what's underneath the fear of
Yeah.
success.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, is there anything else that you would like to say on the topic based on your experience, which you've observed in yourself or in your clients? Is there anything out of your oldish podcast that you've, where you've seen some of these kinds of patterns?
Yeah. A couple things here. One, the message is embrace change as much as you possibly can. It makes you more resilient. It puts you in a place of acceptance, and you don't have to constrict so much. I get that change is scary. I get that it's unknown. And that doesn't have to take any of that away, right? It doesn't dismiss the feelings that come up around it. But if you can expect change, like it's expected that I'm going to start to feel different, that something's going to come up. That is life and the current of it moving me in a direction that is needed. Otherwise, it wouldn't be here.
Yeah.
So that's message one. Number two, something from oldish. Yeah, I guess I would just say back to the identity thing.
Mm-hmm.
I get excited about this. I know not everyone might, but it's really exciting to become a newer version of you. And doesn't mean that it's easy. And we resist things that are hard. However, again, with the work that I do, I see people at their most worried, at a hard, challenging time, and I hear from them on the other side of it. On the other side of it, there is so much depth and richness and, the canyon that was carved by what you went through becomes the Grand Canyon spectacle that people look at, and they look at the colors and they're sitting there and they're going, wow, that must have been some flood that came through. And yet it's awe-inspiring when you can look at it once the water's gone and it carved what it did. And you will get there. Look at the hardest things that you've gone through in life. You're here now. You can look back in retrospect and say, that was so incredibly hard, but here's how it shaped me. And I know you still might be working through ways that it shaped you, but it has given you strength. It has given you resilience on some level. It has given you the tools and ingredients that you have needed to do what you need to do in life. And a message came through, so I want to make sure that I get it as clearly as possible. We are meant to experience. And so staying where you're at, not moving in some direction, is putting off. It's what is that called? Like a beaver with a dam. It's stopping, it's damming up the water that wants to flow.
Yeah.
And just like, what are those doctors? Osteopaths, they work with like cranial sacral fluid, and it's so subtle, right? But when you put your hands under someone's head on their skull, they are trained to feel and tune in to the subtle energy and fluid that's moving in the body.
Yeah.
I really think that life is like that too. And if you can slow everything down enough, take a walk, take some deep breaths, try to meditate by just even listening to your breath, there is a current that's moving.
Yeah.
And instead of fighting that current, just see if you can let it guide you. And I promise the journey is easier if you can let the flow of the current happen versus fighting it 9 ways from Tuesday, because I'm like a salmon, and I have been swimming upstream sometimes so hard fighting. And at some point I'm like, the current is still moving. I can't do it anymore. And when I just let go and I let it happen, I'm carried to where I need to go to every single time.
It did take me until close to 50 to figure out that if life was trying to nudge me in one direction, that resisting it was only going to make my life harder until I allowed it to take me where I was supposed to go. I've said on several occasions been nudged to leave a job or nudged to move to a different place. And because I did feel that need to stay where I was familiar, even if I was uncomfortable, it was an uncomfortable I could live with,
Right.
rather than the unfamiliar, which is a whole other thing. And not only is it uncomfortable, but it's scary. And so I definitely did not learn that lesson on the first 3 or 4 times around. It took me quite a while because I, like you, am I've got a little visitor who's trying to nose his way in here. He may knock my camera over here, but it's being in resistance can feel very I guess the only way to say it is it feels familiar. It feels safe to some degree because you're not having to move. It's like, if you pull a muscle in your back, you don't want to move.
Mm-hmm.
Where movement actually may be the thing that helps you heal it. And so, yeah, I don't think we are alone in having that tendency.
No.
Which is why an opportunity like your path exists to help people realize that.
Yeah, and by the way, I'm a firm believer in talk to someone who's done it. I've sold everything and I went on the road for 3 years. Great, talk to them.
Mm-hmm.
See where they're at and what they learned. Now, their joy or enjoyment of that experience might differ from yours. So I wouldn't get so locked into the exact experience, but more of what they learned.
For sure.
Someone who's been through a job change, a divorce, someone who's been through, a health thing. Talk to them, because if they're on the other side, they have some wisdom. And it's the biggest thing. We stay in our heads with these decisions and we get tortured. And it's just ping-ponging back and forth with your same thoughts. So instead of that, talk to other people who have their experience, and then you can start laying out evidence, and it will make you feel better because it's not just in here, but now you have real life examples.
Yeah. Yeah. Man, that was great. I don't have any other questions, but I could talk to you all day long.
I know, likewise.
I won't take up any more of your time. And thank you so much for sharing your insights. And you're always so open and generous.
Thank you.
And not just with this request, but the stuff that you put out on social media. It is you just invite people into your experience and you share things that are honest and so accessible. So I'm just grateful that you are here with me today, but that you're also out there speaking to people on your own platform and offering the wisdom you have.
Thank you. Thank you for the acknowledgement. I appreciate it. And yeah, we're speaking and sharing how we can. We're in this together, right? To hopefully just have more conversations around this, because the human experience is wild. I am in awe, and this doesn't mean that I'm always in the, oh, this is so wonderful awe. I'm just in awe, good and bad, of what we go through being human.
Yeah.
And I think if we can all look at it like that, we're all kind of on the same page, because being human is wild and crazy and amazing and hard and challenging and sometimes cruel. And again, just like embracing change, if we embrace this and look at it with like, yeah, it's a mixed bag of all of it, but we're doing it together, and I'm learning from you, and hopefully you're learning from me. And, then we can like lift each other up and have some reverence for the experience that we all go through.
Excellent. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you again. And
thank you.
Let's try to get together soon.
Yes, for sure.
Okay.
I'd love it. All right. Good to see you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
I'm gonna do something new. I'm gonna turn these wheels in the winds, flying